Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. My name is Killian. I'm co-founder at Ruby Reese and I will also be your host. So we are back for part 2 of Predation with Darina. If you haven't listened to part 1, I highly recommend you go back and listen to last week's podcast episode, because really we're taking apart the full predatory sequence that we see in the wild and applying it to our modern dogs and seeing what remnants of this predatory instinct still remains and what indications of that we still see in our pet dogs today. But without part 1, you're really going to be a little bit lost for part 2. So I highly recommend listening to those in order. And I'm not going to spend too much time introducing this episode today, because I think if you're listening to this part, you're going to be super, super excited to listen to what Darina has to say. So I suppose it's always a huge pleasure to have such knowledgeable guests on to share their ideas and learnings and different concepts with us. And it's an absolute privilege for me to learn and also to be able to share with you our learning journey. So delighted to have Darina back on, and without further ado, we'll jump straight into the topic of predation, the part 2 of the topic. Hello, Darina. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Tuesday Talks. We're delighted to have you back to talk about part 2, the second part of the predatory sequence. The last time we spoke about the very first couple of steps, and now we're going to move on as well to the next couple. So welcome and thank you for joining me again.
Thanks for having me back. It's brilliant to be here.
Amazing. So last time, can you do a recap of the first 4 steps that we spoke about?
Yeah, so last time we touched on the first steps of the predation sequence, which is our dog's instinctual need to hunt and where it comes from. So we touched on orient, which is our dog seeking out potential prey, sight, which is our dog spotting the prey, and stalk and chase, which is our dog creeping up to close the gap and chasing prey animals.
So if you haven't listened to that part, go back and watch part 1 first, because you might be a little bit lost. But the chase moves nicely into the catch. It's very related to this. So how do we see this in the natural world, I suppose, first?
Yeah, so obviously catch in the natural world, this is where we would see a wild predator finally getting or grabbing their prey, which basically they've subdued them and now they've caught it to try and immobilize the prey. So we would see this kind of manifesting with pet dogs in a few different ways. So the way the predation sequence is listed, we have a grab bite and a kill bite. But we will see this generally where our dogs, again, we kind of hark back to playing fetch. You throw the ball, they catch up to the ball, they grab it. That's them. That's the grab bite. If we're playing with flirt pole, the whole point of our dogs stalking and pouncing and chasing the flirt pole is for them to actually catch the flirt pole. So we've had the release of dopamine and the adrenaline, and then we finally have our dogs hitting their target, which is catching what they've been chasing this whole time.
Exactly. So obviously our dogs on a day-to-day basis don't go down to the park to look for dinner, because they're provided it in their nice little bowl at home. Yeah. So we don't need to worry about that part, and they're not being permanently rewarded for that. But you still see it, I suppose, in an enrichment sense, that they have a little niggle that they like to catch things.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for a lot of our dogs. So we talked about how we've bred certain aspects of the sequence. So we would see in particular the catch or the grab very predominant in our gun dogs and in a lot of our shepherd dogs. And where, just as an example, like for if you have a gun dog, we see a lot of gun dog training. If you watch Crufts every year, they always do gun dog displays where they'll throw a prey dummy and the dogs have to go seek, orientate, find, and then they have the grab bite, which is picking up the dummy, and they usually retrieve it back to the owner. So that's kind of all part of it. We would see that as well. In particular, the grab bite will be very prominent in dogs like Malinois or German Shepherds who do an awful lot of bite sports. And we do see it as well in some of our other dogs like sighthounds, where they will catch eventually, because they're so fast, and they will catch if given the opportunity. A lot of the time they will catch the prey that they are chasing, which usually ends in a grab.
And I suppose if you're looking at the retriever dogs, like your poodles and your golden retrievers and Labradors and everything, these are probably going to be bringing things back as well to the owner. So the catch is probably going to be an important part for them too.
The catch is such an important part. We see it an awful lot with a lot of our dogs. They, in particular with gun dogs, I'll have a lot of clients say, oh, they always have to have something in their mouth because they are intrinsically reinforced just for carrying. We've bred them in particular to pick things up and bring it back to us. That's the whole aspect of gun dogs, is we've actually done the killing, because it's usually, they're usually shooting birds, ducks or other fowl. And we've trained the dogs to go seek out this, grab it, pick it up and bring it back. But the grab part is where they get their release. Oh, it's such a relief to finally get this in my mouth. And we'll see that as well with other breeds, like I was saying, like with the German Shepherds and the Malinois. Like Malinois, their nickname is the Maligator, because they get such intrinsic reinforcement from putting their teeth onto something. And we'll see it as well with dogs like our bully breeds. Like you probably see it an awful lot with Ruby. I'd say a game of tug is probably one of the most fun things that she can do.
Absolutely. They
get such intrinsic reinforcement from finally getting the thing, and they go, oh, I have it now. Look how strong I am. And that's one of the ways that we can offer them that outlet to the grab bite, is literally playing tug with our dogs. If we are playing fetch, which again I recommend you don't do as much as most people seem to do, we allow our dogs to actually catch the item. So if I'm playing flirt pole with one of my dogs, they always have to win. They always have to catch it. So every few seconds, so if we're playing and they're nearly at it, like I'll tease them a bit with it, but they must catch it. They must win at some point, because that's where they get their release, where they finally have achieved the catch of the prey.
Makes sense. And tug of war is definitely in a bully household. It's it's an essential.
Which segues us actually nicely into the next one. So we have the grab bite. Then what we would see, sometimes we would see the kill bite. So the kill bite sounds really like, oh my god, my dog is trying to kill things. The kill bite is very simple. If you let your dog win the toy in a game of tug of war, they might grab it and give it a little shake. And that's what we would see in the wild if a wolf catches a wild prey, they're going to shake it to ensure that they kill it. So often, in particular with sighthounds as well, we'd see this very prevalently. They catch the prey and they shake it, usually to break the prey's neck, which is a bit gruesome. But that's the purpose of that. So when we see our dogs, when they finally catch the thing, they'll grab it and they'll give it a big shake, and they're like, oh, I did it. I caught it, and it's done.
It might sound kind of gruesome, but in the end, I mean, realistically, the dogs need to eat as well. If you're a carnivore, it's going to be part of their life, really, isn't it? So
exactly, for wild animals, it's the circle of life, Simba. It is what it is. Our dogs, obviously, they don't need to do this anymore, so there's intrinsic value to it, where they do it because it feels good.
Exactly. So they don't even know why they're shaking their head when they've got the tug toy in their mouth.
No, they just know they like doing it.
Fascinating, and that gives them their release, and they're done then.
Exactly. But this is why we would see an awful lot with the chase, the catch, and the kill. We would see an awful lot of frustration around this with dogs. In particular, if you have breeds like sighthounds, where they have been so strongly bred to chase and catch the thing. So we would see an awful lot of frustration where if they are on lead and they're unable to do it, this is where we get big outbursts of barking because they want to chase the thing, but they're not able to chase the thing.
And I suppose this is where things like dog parks come into play, and specific areas, and also the games like you mentioned last time, the luring and everything. These can be really, really beneficial, I guess, to help
Yeah,
with that frustration.
yeah. So dog parks, like a controversial topic all on its own. But generally, what you see an awful lot of the time, especially with sighthounds in dog parks, is other dogs are running, they're chasing, but we can actually see a hunt and predatory drift happen with sighthounds in particular, where they have been bred for so long. Like sighthounds, only maybe in the last 20 years that they've become a popular pet again. Because
Hmm.
we've bred them so long for this instinct to be so strong. Because we have obviously a monetary gain in a different industry for the more successful, faster dogs. So this is a very strong instinct in a lot of sighthounds. But we would see like an element of this where sighthounds will course another dog because they're running, they're moving, so they start chasing.
Hmm.
So with dog parks and the like, we would have to be very careful with stuff like that. I love private dog parks; they're my favorite. I'm very fortunate to be near two of them. Um, and it allows you to kind of play a lot of these games in a wide open space with your dog without the worry or the risk of wild animals or other people's pets kind of interfering with the natural chain of events.
And I think that's what it's about with a lot of these points, really, isn't it? Like creating a safe way for these to be expressed, these different parts of the predatory drive to be expressed, but not to involve an actual predatory
Yeah.
situation.
Exactly. Like so, like we talked about. I talk about like different breeds. Like we have bred different breeds to follow different aspects of the predation sequence, but not necessarily the entire thing. So like you
Hmm.
have a French bulldog, she will get more intrinsic value out of tug than
Yeah.
the orientate and the tug than she probably would a lot of the other elements of it, and probably isn't bothered with a lot of the other elements of it. Like you said, you've only seen her stalk once or twice,
Hmm.
whereas different dogs will have different intrinsic values with different parts of the sequence. It would be very, very rare for any pet dog to do the complete sequence.
Hmm.
Um, you would see that on occasion with some of the hunting breeds, but even then, you would not really see the whole thing because if the dogs are hunting wild animals, um, for sport. Sadly, it does happen. Um, they very rarely get to complete the sequence to dissect and consume because they're not catching them for themselves. We see it with gun dogs, they're retrieving the birds back, but that's not for them. That's for the people they're bringing the birds back to. So even then, when we actually do have dogs working with humans in a hunting setting, they don't always get to actually complete the entire sequence.
True. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it's definitely focused in on a couple of, like, one particular segment, or a little grouping of them, usually when they're being bred.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that there's an extra step that comes after kill, that comes
Yes.
up more often
So
in the pet world, right?
yeah, so this is not one I've added. This is one British trainer Jo Rosie Heffernan a few years ago. I seen her talking about this one too, that maybe we should be considering adding this in to the pet dog predation sequence. So the next one would be parade.
Hmm.
So we'd see this so much in gun dogs where they finally have the thing and it's in their mouth and they're running around all proud. I've got this, look what I caught, look what I caught, Amandai amazing. Um but in this as well, so parade, because we have bred our gun dogs to retrieve these items and have such intrinsic value in holding these items, that's when we can also see different problem behaviors arise, such as resource guarding, where our dog has what they consider a high value ticket and they don't want to surrender it, which again is a completely normal behavior. Um, that we would see that in the wild with predators where they want to protect what they've caught. But we would see the parading where a dog finally has it in their gobs and they're like, oh, look at me, look what I caught, haven't I deadly?
Proud as punch, running around the place
Exactly, exactly.
with exactly what they have. So, and I guess this could also be seen in the home then, with things like the tug toy or whatever it is that they're
Yeah,
parading around with it
yeah,
as well.
exactly. So like if you're playing tug or flirt pole or even ball with your dog, when they finally catch it, if you look at their body language when they finally have it, the head goes up, the chest is out. They're like, "Oh, I got it. I got it. Oh, I'm just such the best hunter in this house. Look what I got." So there are like this is why when I would be playing flirt pole or tug with my dog, they always get to win. They always get to win and parade their prize around because it's just it's just one of those where they kind of get to show off their prize, and often, more often than not, they're getting so much reinforcement from playing the game with us that they choose to bring it back and reinstate the game with us.
Hmm. Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. And then I guess it's time to move on to the next step, right? The dissect part of the
Dissection.
sequence.
Dissection is, it sounds very scientific, but we're not cutting up frogs, nor are our dogs. And dissection is where we would see, so we'll, in the wild aspect, we would see the wolves, if they catch something, so say like a rabbit, we would see them start to pull the fur
Hmm.
off of the wild animal so that they can easier get to the meat. And of course, anybody whose dog likes tennis balls, they like cardboard boxes, you'll see this with your dogs all the time and may not have known exactly where it comes from. So, in particular with tennis balls, where your dogs after been playing ball, now they're after parading around with the ball, going to their bed, they have the ball between their paws, and they're pulling the fluff off the ball. That's dissection. That's part of the predation sequence as well. Um, and it's a very easy one for us to be able to give our dogs outlets for this, where we can offer them, like I said, cardboard boxes, tissue paper. I like to use the cardboard tube rolls that you get
Hmm.
like with kitchen roll and toilet roll, put some treats in it and allow my dogs to shred it in order to get the prize that's inside. But food doesn't always have to be the most intrinsic motivator within this because they get such joy out of doing it alone. Um, my older dog, Ozzy, he was an old deerhound, greyhound cross. His favorite thing was tissue boxes. He loved just pulling the tissue out of tissue box. So we would buy him like the 50-cent tissue boxes in Aldi and just let him go to town on it. Wasn't all the time, but just let him go to town on it, shredding it apart. And when he was done with it, he'd be like, "Oh, I feel great." And he just toddled off to bed then. That was his job done. So we talk like about, like I said, the whole predation sequence, but dogs find different parts of it more rewarding than others. So dissection though is probably one of the scent and dissection are two of the easiest ones that we can offer our dogs such easy outlets for.
Absolutely, and we hear it quite a lot from customers that when they're talking about soft toys, cuddly toys for dogs, that oh, there's no point in buying him a soft toy because he'll find that weak spot in the toy and then pull out
Yeah.
all of the thread. And when you say to them, like, you do realize your dog might be getting the most enrichment out of this activity, that was how many ever euros well spent on your toy. But people are shocked to hear that this could actually be something so valuable for their
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah, like exactly like Cruz in particular. So Cruz in particular likes hairy toys. So at Christmas is my favorite time because you always have all like those elf gunks in the pet shops,
Hmm.
and I just stock up on them. And he'll spend the rest of the year pulling the beards off them, pulling the fluff off them. That's the end goal, and that's fine. That's money well spent, like you said. He's getting so much value out of that and such reinforcement out of that that I would never ever encourage anyone to scold their dogs tearing up a toy. At the end of the day, it's only a toy. It's made in a factory. You can just go replace one. But if there is an issue there where you're like, I can't just keep buying toys, that's where we can offer our dogs different outlets that are in our recycling bin. Or there's even other toys out there that actually have Velcro on them that you can stuff with stuff purely for our dogs to gut essentially, so they can take the innards out of it. Um, so that's why I love to use cardboard. So cardboard, we can shove loads of newspaper, tissue paper into like a cardboard tube with some treats in there and allow our dogs to pull the whole lot out and to dissect it. And the more of those you give your dogs, more outlets of those you give your dogs, the more likely your cuddly toys are going to last a wee bit longer.
So true. And I suppose like mixing it up as well is going to keep it really, really exciting for your dog as well, because, you know, one thing can be exciting for now, but it's not always going to be exciting if it's every day.
Exactly, exactly. Like when I'm giving my dog special treats, Ruby Reese treats, when I'm giving my dog special treats, I always put them into something that they can destroy in order to be able to do elements of the sequence. So when they are destroying something and they're seeking that food, they're getting their dopamine. They're getting that from that, or they're getting their serotonin from destroying things as well. So it offers them that chemical release that they need, they instinctually need and they enjoy, while also getting to give them a treat. Whereas if I just take out a packet of treats to give them a treat, it's gone. Whereas if I can
Exactly.
put it into a homemade enrichment puzzle, and it takes them 15-20 minutes to do it. A little bit longer for Milo now because he got a couple of teeth out in the vet, so it
Oh,
takes him even a little bit longer to do that again. But he enjoys it so much that even sometimes if I put food into a cardboard box for him and he's shredding up the box, he can have access to those treats and he'll still continue shredding up the box, because that's the more reinforcement is actually coming from the shredding for him than it is actually the consuming of the prize.
and I suppose one of the ways that humans, we really interact with our world with our hands and our fingers, but and we kind of explore textures and colors and temperatures
Yeah.
and whatever that way, whereas really dogs, it's with their mouths, isn't it? Because they don't have
Yeah,
hands and arms to do this with
yeah,
in the same
yeah.
way.
Even though we do call their front paws their little hands and their little fingers,
Yeah,
but yeah, like we are very tactile. Like we are primates. As much as a lot of people in the world might want to deny that, we are primates. We are a
yeah.
tactile species. A lot of our exploration comes from touching. Like I'm sitting in a car recording this right now, and I keep touching the steering wheel and touching the buttons while I'm talking. That's intrinsically reinforcing for me. Um, so we get the same thing, and it helps soothe us, it helps concentrate us. Whereas our dogs, they explore the world through, like you said, through their mouths and through their nose. So they get
Yeah.
all their information with their nose. And like you said, they consume things, they destroy things, they pick up things, everything goes through the gob. Um so yeah, they get so much reinforcement from just being able to destroy different textures and different fields. And it's why you might find like a lot of dogs, like we were saying with the cuddly toys, not all dogs will destroy a cuddly toy because that texture might just not be reinforcing for them. So Milo's far more into his cardboard boxes than he ever was a cuddly toy. He's not really too into cuddly toys. He's more into tennis balls. He likes to shred a tennis ball or shred a box. Whereas Nico and Cruz are far more into their cuddly toy dissection than they would be a cardboard box dissection.
And as you mentioned, giving them options and outlets for this particular part of the sequence as well might protect your shoes, your
Yeah.
socks hanging around the house, right? I mean, this could have a lot of benefits as well.
Yeah, with our toys and our shoes, our dogs love them because there's so many layers and different textures in the shoes that dissecting a shoe is so reinforcing. They get to nibble at it, pull the laces, pull the leather off, get to the inner soft foam. Um, Whereas if we give our dogs outlets for these behaviors at home, for this need, this instinct that they have, we will see a reduction in problem behaviors. Whereas if our dogs get to dissect a box or a cuddly toy or some cardboard tubes, or even a lot of people who raw feed give their dogs like meaty bones where they can pull the meat off the bone. All of that kind of goes into your savings box for my dog has outlets for dissection and my shoes are now safe. Because they have that outlet, they're getting that need out, they're getting that energy out through an appropriate outlet.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then when we are using you know, dissection in an enriching way, I suppose we don't want them then with the same objects to move on to the final piece of the sequence being to consume, right? You don't want them
Which,
eating the
yes.
cardboard and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like cardboard by itself, like a couple of little bits here and there, it's not going to do our dogs a huge amount of damage. But if they're
Yeah.
eaten obviously in a higher volume and stuff like that, we do want to be very careful, which is why we always monitor our dogs when we're working with non-food items. Whether it's a shop
Hmm.
bought enrichment or it's a homemade enrichment, we always want to supervise. just to be safe and to be sure that nothing bad is going to happen to them while they're being given outlets for this stuff. But yes, the consummation of food after they get to complete elements of the sequence, that's where the serotonin happens. So they've done all of this work and they finally get to chow down on something. So like we talked earlier on in our very first one with orientate, when I was saying if you scatter feed and throw some treats out in the grass, so your dog gets to seek out this food and then consume. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the element of it, food can be used to kind of finish off the predation sequence for our dogs. But that is the intrinsic motivator, especially for their wild cousins, is to actually eat and stay alive.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in nature, it's obvious to everyone why the predation sequence ends with consume. And I guess, yeah, like you say, you're kind of literally feeding that need. Then when you're using treats as parts of some of the enrichment, then
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly. Or like I was saying there with Cruz with the chase for part of our training, where if I bowl the treat along the ground, he still gets to chase, but it always ends in consuming. Um, so earlier on as well, when I was talking about Nico and he gets to look at the rabbits, when second he turns around and re-engages with me, I always toss some treats into the grass and he gets to seek those out and consume them, which helps him kind of complete that little sequence where I've seen it, what do I do? Oh, okay, I've consumed. That helps kind of put like a little cap, a little bookend on the sequence.
So then how can we use this to, I suppose, overall in our training with our dog and enriching their lives in general?
So a lot of the time we will see if our dogs have been bred to do specific jobs, like we've already touched on, we might see problem behaviors in the home because they're not being given these outlets. So we can use enrichment to help fulfill that need as well, which will help in a reduction of a lot of problem behaviors because they're getting to practice these behaviors in a very safe outlet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but we can also use it in training. So like I was saying earlier on, like I do scent detection with my dog. So that is an element of training where we get to put in like a lot of our man hours and kind of structure how they will use their own predatory instincts in order to participate in a dog sport. So that we do scent detection. A lot of people they would do man trailing, tracking, and a lot of these things are actually put into competition format in different dog sports. For the grab bite and stuff like that, like I said, we have bite sports and stuff like that, so we can actually use our dogs' instinctual needs and channel that into a dog sport, which really, really helps with problematic behaviors. In particular, my own dog, Nico. So Nico is a reactive dog, and giving him this outlet for sniffing and scenting, that helps with his optimism and helps with his happy hormones as well, because he's getting this outlet, this very kind of more intense side of the outlet where, like, if when I tell him to go sniff things, his nose is going a mile a minute. It's
Mm-hmm.
going so quickly that like he has to process everything that he's smelling in the environment in order to be able to hone in on this particular scent that we've trained. So he's trained to search out for catnip, which he retrieves the catnip. So that's a grab retrieve, even though he's a lurcher, my little mini gun dog. So he's been trained if he smells catnip to retrieve the catnip and bring it back to me. Um, and he's been trained on several other different scents. Our most recent one that we've actually introduced is actually rabbit scent. So that
Mm-hmm.
when we're out and about and he smells and sees a rabbit, he's not getting that immediate explosion. There's a rabbit. So that he can kind of channel that, oh, I know what to do when I smell this scent. I know if I follow it and I track it, and then there'll be a reward at the end of it. So it helps kind of keep everything a little bit tidier without him kind of going over the top as well.
And I love how, this really has a focus on individualizing for your own dog as well, because we now know that not every dog is going to be really in love with every single part of the sequence, right?
Yeah.
And like you say, you can see what your dog likes and what your dog needs. So from a
Exactly,
behavioral
yeah.
point of view, what really gets them going, what gets them upset, and maybe you can desensitize certain things. Maybe you can give them other outlets. Like you said, we were talking about, you know, you don't want your trainers being chewed up, so you can give them a similar but different kind of outlet for that
Exactly,
behavior,
yeah.
right? So I guess it's a lot about individualizing it to the specific dog's needs.
It is, it is. So it's a lot about individualizing. Like I've said, like I've had 6 lurchers in my lifetime and a cavalier. I have to mention little Daisy. I've had 6 lurchers, and not a single one of them has actually done the predation sequence the same way. They don't all get the same enjoyment out of different parts of it. So Nico will probably be the closest. Nico loves everything. He's a very enthusiastic dog for everything. He's amazing for training that way. And when you have an enthusiastic dog that wants to participate, like you said, it's easier for us to get to certain levels in different dog sports. But they've all been so different. They've all kind of enjoyed certain elements of it. Some of them would enjoy sniffing more. Some of them would enjoy the tearing up of things more. Like one of my older dogs, Amber, she, in 13 years that I had her, she only chased wildlife twice in the 13 years. And like she did not get she didn't get the huge buzz out of the chase, which is so unusual for, like, she was a greyhound cross. So she was like, meh, I'm all right not chasing that. I'm happy to just sniff out the things and look at them, and then that's kind of the end of it. So it really is like we've bred our dogs to perform certain tasks, but that does not mean that every dog of that breed is going to love doing the same elements of the sequence as another dog of the same breed.
And I think that's so important to point out as well. You know, generalizations are great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every individual
Exactly. Yeah.
that could fit into that category does. So
Exactly.
it's important to I suppose monitor each of your dogs individually and figure out what they love doing. And I suppose it's a good point to bring up as well. I'm guessing the predatory sequence doesn't explain absolutely everything about dogs. It's a tool that we can use to maybe better understand why our dogs might be doing some things, but I'm guessing it's not the only thing that you ever need to know about dogs, right?
Of course, it's definitely not the only thing, but a lot of the natural behaviors that we would see because of the predation sequence. But there's so much to know about canine behavior, stuff that we don't even know yet. Science doesn't always know. I mean, we're always studying behavior, studying human behavior, studying canine behavior. There's always more to know, and it doesn't always fit so nicely into a little box that way. But the predation sequence allows us to kind of get an insight as to why our dogs might be doing certain things. So, like, why is your terrier always digging up your back garden? It's because we've bred them to want to chase vermin. So
Mhm.
digging is part of that. So there's always, the predation sequence helps us see these kind of more exaggerated natural behaviors that still exist in our dogs, despite it's probably despite and because of the domestication process.
Exactly. It's changed over the thousands of years as we've domesticated them and started feeding them from the table as opposed to
Exactly.
letting them off to do their own thing. And I suppose in summary, because it's just been fascinating talking about the whole sequence, but in summary, I guess it's just about encouraging people to get out there and start looking at their dogs and seeing which parts of the sequence might be
Yeah.
worth exploring with them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we've touched on, like, every aspect and how you can offer your dog outlets to this. Obviously, I'm always going to promote scent sports. It's one of my favorite things to train. I'm just obsessed with scent work. And there's so many different aspects of scent work that we can do as well. Whether it's even just pet dog scent work. That is one of the easiest things to train. Our dogs naturally do. They get natural enjoyment out of it. But there's so much, like, that's why you see an awful lot of collies in agility, doing hoopers, doing fly ball. We can channel a lot of the breed aspects that we've bred into all of these different things and offer them so many outlets to better enjoy their lives living in this very urbanized environment that we've brought them into, which is so far removed from from when the original wolves that they would have been domesticated from.
Absolutely. No, it's fascinating. And we all know what a brilliant offering our whole dog community has now. All different types of facilities, of trainers, of sports, and also of even objects like the toys, the tug toys, etc. So I mean, there's definitely tools and options out there for everyone and every dog.
Definitely.
Darina, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to go through the entire predatory sequence with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
No worries.
So once again, an absolute huge thank you to Darina for coming on, not only for one episode, but for 2 weeks of episodes for us at Ruby Reese. I love this topic, and it's so fascinating to me for for just understanding how behaviors could even have evolved within dogs, and that these remnants of predatory behavior still kind of linger in a teeny tiny way. And of course it's not the only way of looking at dog behavior, but it certainly explains little hints of what our dogs get up to. So if you are interested in checking out what Darina does, you can check out her socials and her website, which will be listed in the show notes. You can also find Ruby Reese details in the show notes. If you would be so kind, please do consider following us or subscribing on the platform you're listening to this podcast right now. And if you would like to support Ruby Reese as a small business, of course you can head over to our web shop, ruby-reese.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I really look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday.